Hello and welcome to the continuation of my analysis of Romeo and Juliet. Would you believe we're 9-10 videos in and we're still in Act 1, Scene 1? But of course this is such a powerful opening scene and there's so much to analyse, so I'm not going to rush it, but I think rather than 50 this will probably take about 100 videos to do the play. Well, we just had the Prince Aeschylus threat that if there's ever any problems again, their lives will pay the forfeit. And then we have exit all but Montague, Lady Montague and Benvolio. So basically Montague, Lady Montague and Romeo's cousin. Start off with a bit of name analysis. Quite interesting, the name Montague. It's from the Italian Monte, which means mountain. Obviously, this is an Italian story originally, as we found out in video number 1. So the Italian meaning of names is going to be the important one. As we find when we analyse the name of Romeo, the name has different meanings in different languages. But of course, the Italian meaning is the one we should pay most attention to. So what does it mean? Well, it means mountain, and I guess that's a symbol of size, strength and stature, all of which Montague has. He is the big man, the head of the family, and it's quite a fitting name. So Montague, his wife and Benvolio are the three left on the stage. And Montague begins by questioning Benvolio. Who set this ancient quarrel new abroach? Speak, nephew, were you by when it began? I think what's quite interesting here is that Montague refers to it as an ancient quarrel, obviously therefore kind of acknowledging the fact, as the prologue did, that this has been a bitter and long feud between the two families. He says, who set it new abroach? In other words, who started the fight off again? Speak, nephew, so talk to me, Benvolio. Were you by when it began? Meaning, were you here when it started? To which Benvolio quite rightly replies, here were the servants of your adversary and yours close fighting ere I did approach. In other words, when I turned up, the Capulet family and your servants were fighting. I drew to part them. Doesn't mean he got a pen and paper and started doing some pictures. It means he pulled his sword out to part them, to stop them from fighting. In that instant came the fiery Tybalt. Fiery meaning, hot-headed, aggressive Tybalt, with his sword prepared. So Tybalt turned up just as I got my sword out to stop the fight. He had his sword out, which, as he breathed defiance to my ears, he swung about his head and cut the winds, who nothing hurt withal hissed him in scorn. So a little bit of mockery here of Tybalt, that he swooshed his sword through the air, and it didn't actually hit anyone. The hissing sound that was made as he whooshed his sword through the air was almost, the mockery from the heir, who was kind of like, taking the mickey out of him. What are you doing? You're hitting nothing. While we were interchanging thrusts and blows, came more and more and fought on part. And part till the prince came, who parted either part. So, we were fighting, and then more and more people turned up, and then the prince came and stopped it. So Benvolio gives a very honest, truthful account of what happened, and that matches, of course, the analysis of his name. Then Lady Montague jumps right in with this. Oh, where is Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am he was not at this fray. Quite a bizarre response from Lady Montague, almost suggesting that, it's not important what happened with the servants. Romeo is the key. And of course, the audience here are now introduced. This is the first mention of the hero of the whole play. They know him from the title. They guess he is the person being alluded to in the prologue as a star-crossed lover who takes his life. But, this is it. So here we are. Oh, Romeo. And Romeo is a very interesting name. As I said, we hear about him before we meet him. It has, in the Italian meaning, the translation pilgrim from Rome. What is a pilgrim? It's not something we're so accustomed to these days, but a pilgrim is a person who journeys to a sacred place, who goes on a pilgrimage, a journey to perhaps to visit a saint or to go to a certain holy land for religious purposes. In the play, this is jumping ahead, but I think it's important to understand the context of it. Juliet does call Romeo good pilgrim, and Romeo does call Juliet holy shrine. So there's this sense in the play, backed up by the use of the name Romeo, that Romeo is on a pilgrimage, is on a sort of sacred journey, and his destination, his end point, is Juliet. And she is presented as almost a kind of mythical sort of religious figure. And of course, this is, very interesting imagery from Shakespeare, particularly when we find out later, and I don't want to give it away, but, I'll do a spoiler alert. We find out later that Romeo has been pining over Rosalind. And we could suggest that perhaps he is on a journey like a pilgrim. He's working his way through different girls, but ultimately the sacred end point of his pilgrimage is Juliet. So all of that just from the name Romeo, pretty clever. So Benvolio then jumps in and says, "Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east," so an hour before sunrise, "a troubled mind drave me to walk abroad, where underneath a grove of sycamore that westward rooteth from the city's side, so early walking did I see your son." So what Benvolio is saying, very early this morning, an hour before sunrise, I was a bit stressed out and unhappy, so I decided to go for a walk, and just by the trees, on the westward side of the city, not westward as in Tim Westwood, but as in to the west. "So early walking did I see your son. I saw Romeo walking there. Towards him I made, but he was ware of me and stole into the covert of the wood." So I went towards Romeo, but he saw me and he kind of ran off into the woods. "I measuring his affections by my own, that most are busied when they're most alone, pursued my humour, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned who gladly fled from me." What Benvolio is saying here is that I do a lot of my thinking and kind of contemplation when I'm on my own, and I assumed that Romeo was the same, and I didn't want to disturb his thinking and his contemplation, so I let him get away from me because I assumed he was deep in thought. Montague then says, "Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs." This is some lovely imagery here from Shakespeare, who really does give some wonderful lines to his characters. "Many a morning hath he there been seen," so we've seen him there a lot of times in the morning, "with tears augmenting the fresh morning dew." So his tears were pouring down his face and adding to the fresh water drops on the raindrops and the morning dew on the kind of the grass, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs. So the clouds in the sky were added to by the big sighs that Romeo was exhaling, in this kind of childlike image of as he goes, he breathes out a cloud which goes up into the sky. "But also soon as the all-cheering sun should in the furthest east begin to draw the shady curtain from Aurora's bed, away from the light steals home my heavy son." So in other words, as soon as the sun comes up, and Aurora is the god of morning, as in the sun comes up in the morning, not as in mourning someone's death, he goes off to his own bed. And portentous, worryingly significant. Now I'm going to make you dizzy by going back like this, because I've obviously done my path not brilliantly there. Away from the light, steals home my heavy son, in private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks far daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Black and portentous must this humour prove, unless good counsel may the counsel remove. So what Montague is saying is, he is always off crying and sighing and heaving and being upset early morning, but as soon as the sun comes up, he runs off to his bedroom, locks the door, blocks the windows, makes it all dark. And this must be black and portentous. Portentous, a pretty tricky word, meaning worryingly significant. And we're worried then about Romeo, unless good counsel may the cause remove. So in other words, unless someone can figure out what's wrong with him and help him out. Benvolio says, my noble uncle, do you know the cause? In other words, Lord Montague, do you know why he's upset? Montague says, I neither know it nor can learn of him, so I don't know why he's upset, and he won't tell me. Benvolio says, have you importuned him by any means? And importuned here means, really urgently and repeatedly asked him and pressed him for why he feels that way. And Montague says, both by myself and many other friends. So in other words, I've tried to find out what's wrong with him. I've got lots of other people to try to find out what's wrong with him. But his own affections counsellor is to himself, I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close. So in other words, he counsels himself, he advises himself. I don't know how good his advice to himself is, but he's so secret and close, so far from sounding and discovery as is the bud bit with an envious worm, ere he can spread his sweet leaves to the air or dedicate his beauty to the sun. There's a really clever bit of natural imagery here. He's an advisor to himself, that's what counsellor meant. But what about this bit, this worm and the plant? Well, basically, Romeo is like a flower that won't open up to the world because it's been poisoned. He keeps everything within, but it's clear he's not flourishing. So, clearly there's work to be done. Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, we would as willingly give cure as know. So if we just knew why he was upset, we would, try and sort it out. And then enter Romeo. And the effect on the audience here is that they're going to be thinking, wow, all this stuff is kicking off. And now we can find out why. And Benvolio says, see where he comes, so please you step aside. I'll know his grievance or be much denied. So basically he's saying, I'm going to try and, work out why he is so unhappy. But leave me to do it on my own. And Montague says, I would thou wert so happy by thy stay, to hear true shrift, come madam, let's away. What does he mean? Well, he means, I hope you find happiness in staying, and in staying that you can work out why he's so upset. Come on, Lady Montague, let's get out of here. And Montague and Lady Montague disappear, setting the scene for Benvolio to speak to Romeo. But I think we'll save that for the next video. So please do subscribe to the channel. Check out MrBruff.com for an ebook. iTunes for the podcast. Just search Mr. Bruff on iTunes. Mr. Bruff English for Twitter. Thank you.